I have to I have to take a tour of Northern Europe to meet everybody, and they already have an idea as to how long this stuff takes,
Mhm.
but they're still wanting all the paperwork in place before I consider going out the door. But they're going to pay my way. That's that's the best part. I'm like,
Yeah.
wonderful. But
Uh-huh.
I know as soon as the word gets out, I'm going to be getting requests from every Tom, Dick, and Harry on diplomatic things that I need to pursue while I'm there.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, it's we're now 10 minutes, so let's begin. We're recording this, so those people who are late or can't join us today, they should be able to pick up here on the recording. Uh, Now I do know that in our recent meetings, because the meetings tended to go long, that it's tough to watch a multi-hour recording of a meeting. And we are working to find ways to sort of extract the gist of the meetings and get it down, make it easier for people to watch. Today, since we don't have that many people on the call, there's a better chance that we'll be able to keep this meeting comparatively brief and still get through all the material. Uh, there's also, well, let me start it. Ding. I'm Bill Graham. I'm the president of the Rotary Dare to Be Great Global eClub, and I declare this meeting on 7 June 2025 to be open. Uh, in Up until COVID, really, the major focus, our club is focused on all the major problems facing the world because we believe that to fulfill our obligation to be of the greatest service possible to our community, in which in our case is the entire world as a global e-club, that we have to address all the major problems facing the world because we don't know which one is the one that's going to come up and clobber us. But within that, we felt that the one that would give us the leverage to make the biggest difference in the world tended to be focused on education. We felt that was the case where we would have the greatest opportunity to mobilize the greatest number of people and get them used to making a real significant difference in the world. When you can mobilize hundreds of millions of people at a time, which is what we had plans to be able to do. And we're going to get back to that here, hopefully, within this next year. But of course, COVID came along. And so a lot of that had to get put on the back burner because we were looking to leverage the United Nations at that time. I was the vice chair of the NGO Committee for Education, Learning, and Literacy at the UN. And we were hoping to be able to win the support of the Secretary General in massively mobilizing people, young people around the world, to get engaged in doing things like reducing illiteracy and reducing the number of children in the world not in school due to poverty and so forth. Anyway, so education was our focus up until that time. And we had to take a little pause because when the kids aren't in schools and you can't reach them, you can't really do those. Plus, the UN itself, there was very little going on for a number of years. In the meantime, while we were sort of waiting to get back to really putting the big push on education, AI really hit the public awareness with the introduction of ChatGPT in the end of 2022. And it's really rapid, almost amazing growth over the since then. Let's face it, within 5 days, 1 million users. Within 2 months, to have over 100 million users, that has never been heard of any time in history. And it is just, I mean, within days, things were accomplished that took Facebook and other technologies many, many months or years to accomplish. So, and then since then, it's just been on a tear of the capabilities, what's capable and possible. And because of the rapid advances in what is possible, the recognition of the changes to come, not the changes within the technology, but the changes this is likely to have on our society and economy and so forth, have become more apparent. Things that people were thinking, well, we might see them in the 2060s, and then it gets, well, we move it forward to the 2040s. And now people are saying, oh, those things that we were thinking about in the 2040s are likely to come before 2030, or at least at the latest, 2035. And this involves all kinds of things affecting society, jobs, and just how people live. But an area here that I've been especially interested in is the intersection of education and AI. And this is not so much, well, it's going to have an impact on the way things work, but it's also AI enabling us to achieve goals that we never imagined could be achievable. Now we're not there yet, but I think here we can see the path forward. So today's topic is a little bit the result of a lot of conversations I've had with AI over especially this last few days on what would have the greatest impact on education outcomes in the world in the shortest amount of time. And that's what I hope to be able to talk about today. And I'm hoping here to get feedback from the um, from those of you. Some might be skeptical about some of the possibilities, but I'm really looking here to hear comments on those. Now, I have a PowerPoint. I just want to, well, before I get started, so the topic is going to be how to have the maximum impact on education outcomes. It's going to be focused on the US, even though we know we're focused on the world. And we know that the conditions are very different in the global south, for example, than they are in the global north for the most part. But we're going to look here at the global north here, the developed countries, and specifically the United States in this case, because that's where we tend to have an awful lot of statistics available to look at when we try to estimate what the impacts might be. And the situations are actually quite similar if we look at Europe as an example. My kids got their early education in Europe. My grandchildren are in schools in Europe. And I've I've met with principals in schools in Europe and studied the situation in different countries there. So I'm fairly familiar with the situation there as well. And once we get beyond that, we can look at seeing how these same solution opportunities present themselves for helping out to close the gaps, the education gaps in the global south. So we're going to look at both, but for today's session, we're primarily going to look at the United States, and then we'll see how we leverage the thinking that we're looking at there for the rest of the world. Okay, before we start, any comments that anybody um, does anybody have? So, Lisa,
Yeah,
I
I
see you.
have.
Oh, yes. Okay, Huma, you start then.
Okay, thank you so much. Today, between the lines, we have a festival, the Eid festival here in Pakistan. But even I joined you. The thing is, no matter how good we are and how acceptable we are and unacceptable we are, those who are not accepting AI, the most important thing I think we all have to work on ethical use of AI and proper policies of AI when it comes to education and integration of AI in curriculum. These two things, if they go straight, I think things will be very different and things will be quite smooth for the rest of the world. those who are not adopting, or those who are on the intersection or in the transitional phase? Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Yes, thank you. Well, keep your eye on what I'm going to be talking about here and see how that fits into the theory, because one of the things when we talk about AI in education, a lot of people, they just immediately turn and say, okay, how can teachers use AI to improve their teaching or to reduce their workload, generate tests, do grading, handle administrative things, communicate with parents, all those kinds of things. But and a few might look at it, how can I use AI to with tutoring and with perhaps preparing lessons and curricula and things like that. But there's not a lot of people that look and say, do we need education at all? And so that becomes an interesting point on that. Yes, Lisa Nice.
Hi. Yeah, no, AI, of course, it's a tool, and hopefully it remains a tool, but we don't know what that outcome's going to be. And of course, people need to learn it. However, there are many more skills, ideas, and concepts that are put out there that can't be taught by AI, which is why I've made the commentary about cultural education. Um, Cultural education helps us to make sense of the thoughts in our minds and the feelings in our hearts. It's a method of exploring that we can do in public under very specific circumstances. And the very first thing, what we do when we go to a concert or watch a dance or any other type of performance of these arts, the very first thing that we look for is something that we recognize. That's part of the 5 parts of personality in the brain. And as soon as that recognition occurs, understanding begins.
Mhm.
So you're looking at something that helps us make sense of all the different senses that we have and all the information they can feed to us.
Okay.
And it's done under circumstances where you're going to get guidelines all the time because you're looking at different cultures
Mhm, mhm.
and how it's processed.
Okay.
Plus the
So,
other benefits that it brings, where you're not having to sit there on a couch in front of a psychiatrist trying to figure out why you can't sleep at night.
oops, wrong one. Wrong share. Okay, let me get back. Okay, I think here maybe I'm looking a little bit at a different direction, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
see how that fits in here in a moment. Um,
Well, my biggest concern about um, trying to limit things to pure computer learning is something called dopamine addiction. A very basic thing that occurs to all of us when we're
Yes,
inactive.
when we are inactive. True.
Yes. So
Yes,
having that healthy mix
that
of
is important.
exposure, we're dealing with education, not of just the occipital lobe, which is what working a computer does, but of every lobe of the brain.
okay.
And of course, we got a whole class of people where every lobe is active anyway, and it's so much information that they're getting, they can't quite sort it out, and so they're given to a series of behavioral issues.
Mhm,
I know because I'm one of those people.
mhm. Okay, let
Without
me let
well,
me
without the cultural education, I wouldn't be where I'm at.
yeah. Let me redirect this a little bit here because I'm looking here initially at a very specific thing. For those things that are currently measured by the current education system, how do we what is the problems related to that and how can we have an impact on that? So this is what I'm not looking at education of how do we uh, do a better job in determining what education would be of value to the world. But this particular case is for those things that are measured currently by Common Core and by the traditional education, how bad is that situation, and where do we go? And so one of the things that, and I'm only going to show a little bit, this whole PowerPoint was all generated by AI. And but looking here in the US, we find that less than 4% of American 18-year-olds have achieved mastery in all the academic and civic disciplines that are currently taught in the education system here in the US. Only 8 to 10% are pardon me, 8 to 10% are functionally illiterate. 60% of our college entrants require remediation, and we have to remember that more than half of young people don't even get to college. And that doesn't necessarily mean that if they got to college, they need remediation, because we have a lot of young people who don't go to college because their passions and interests are different, and that's perfectly fine. But we know that the net result of all this is we have widespread civic disengagement, financial vulnerabilities, and misinformation, and it perpetuates into following generations. So if you have parents who never learn to read, or have no ability to understand the news or so forth, this problem carries through to their children. And a number of years ago, this is whoa, how many years ago now? Let's see. This is almost almost 40 years ago. I was doing studies into education. I took 3 years, and I traveled around the U.S. Visiting schools in all over Missouri, Texas, Georgia, and the entire Northeast, from Washington, D.C., pretty much every state northeast of there, and looking to see what was the cause of the problems. I had just completed a stint building up a course sequence and teaching a course sequence at Purdue University. That was very successful. Our program, our school was new, a school of technology. And within 2 years of our school being established, we were named number one program in the country in our field. So we were very successful. I had a small part in contributing to that. But I realized that university was too late to make the kind of difference that was needed. And that's why I went out and visited all those schools, spoke to the better part of 1,000 educators over that time. And so I was very interested in understanding what was going on with education. And along the way, I visited an adult literacy program that had a lot of adults who were there to learn to read in a civic program here in Western Pennsylvania. And what really blew my mind is that almost every one of those adults that couldn't read and was there to learn to read had a high school diploma. That means they had all graduated from high school without having learned to read. I also recalled I had a student joined my program as a junior at a very well reputable university, and I found out he couldn't read. Now, he was there because he was a star athlete. He was a star football player. He was a backup athlete for the U.S. Olympic team. And so, you didn't dare touch him. Well, it turns out I gave him a grade that disqualified him for sports. And of course, the school came down on me like a ton of bricks. But I stuck with it. And actually, I ended up setting up a little program, and we taught him to read. He became a very good friend, passed away, unfortunately, too early. But he ended up working for a very reputable company in Princeton. So, at any rate, the bottom line is, how can we have so many adults in the United States with high school diplomas that can't read? And so that really became a point here of looking at so many of the problems. We went into a elementary school about 7 or 8 years ago, and we found that this was in a very upper class community. It was a very good primary school. These were 9 and 10-year-old students, and I was shocked at how many of them couldn't spell at all. And looking into it a little further, we found that their parents, for the most part, didn't speak English or didn't have an education themselves. They were migrants that had come to the U.S. And they were doing the best they could, but it was very difficult for those children. Anyway, so the problem here is that the education standards that we think we've gotten in the US for the most part aren't true. And we see that right now on the most recent testing on the so-called National Report Card, that it is significantly more, almost 70% of students in the United States uh, get a very, very insufficient education. Okay, so imagine though what we would have in America if instead of 1 to 3% of high school students, high school graduates achieving full mastery, we had 80% of students achieving full mastery and 100% with high functional literacy. That means they understand the news. They can vote. They can understand what the issues are for participating in our elected election process. They were all critical thinkers, lifelong learners, engaged citizens. What that would mean, the sheer difference in our economic output, the GDP per capita would go through the roof. The tax revenues would go through the roof, and what the government would be able to do to support the weaker members in our society would dramatically increase, and everybody's lives would be significantly better. Um, okay, so the one thing here that the AI concluded is this is not possible if by tweaking the current system. We can't tweak the current system. Now I'm going to stop the share here because what comes from here is very interesting, but I only got a chance to see this about 10 minutes before the session here started. And I noticed some of the points that needed to be brought out were not brought out. So in looking here at the education results in New Jersey, where I'm located, and New Jersey is one of the most populous states. We have 750,000 students in the United States or in New Jersey, just in primary schools. So this is a very good sample to see what's going on. And we see that the top 10% of primary schools, we have an average of about 92% of students at grade level in fourth grade. If we look at the bottom 10% of schools, it's less than 10%. So we have this huge gap there in education, and the odds that students in any of those schools that have fewer than 10% of students at grade level by fourth grade, the odds are those students are not never going to achieve any kind of a significant education. And in fact, in two of the major cities, including the capital, Trenton, the capital of New Jersey, we have dropout rates of almost 50% do not complete high school. If we, there's a district attorney in California that did some studies on the impact of education or the correlation of education and crime and incarceration. And what he found was, based on his formula that he came up with, we have a number of primary schools in New Jersey that 1 out of every 3 boys going into first grade is statistically damned to spend a year in prison before they're 30 years old. How can you possibly accept a situation like that? Because those schools have had that same situation going on for more than a decade. For more than a decade, they have never achieved 10% of students to be at grade level by fourth grade. And we have 73,000 children attending those schools that have never achieved any kind of educational success. Entire cities and communities that year after year after year have failed to achieve academic success. And it doesn't take a lot of rocket science to realize that most of the crime is in areas where children fail to get an education, and therefore the opportunities for those people in the legal paths is minimal when they're older. What do we expect them to do to survive if they don't have the means to survive according to the normal rules of our society? So we look then and say, well, why? Why do we have such great disparity between between the schools that are in the top 10% and the schools that are in the bottom 10%? And if you just go and ask AI, or if you just go and read documents, they're saying, well, it's the wealth gap. And therefore, those schools, they don't have the quality of funding. They don't have the resources. But yet, when we went and looked, we found that some of the worst schools in the state of New Jersey spend up to 40% more per student than the best schools in the state. So, and we looked into availability of computers, availability, all the resources that you typically find, and there was not a significant difference. So then we turned and said, oh, the next thing that's pointed out is they don't have the quality of teachers. So we took a look, and we find through Teach for America and things like this that some of the best teachers were in the lowest performing schools. So that didn't explain it. And of course, we could play a little mind game and say, what do you think would happen if we were to take the teachers from the best primary school in New Jersey and swap them out with the teachers from the worst primary school in New Jersey? If those people that say it's all the teachers, if they're correct, we should see that worst school skyrocket in a performance in the next years. Uh, but that's probably not what we're going to see. We're probably going to see a bunch of teachers quitting the teaching profession out of frustration because they couldn't make a difference. So when we got down to really looking at let me relay one other thing that may make a lot of sense. We played another little mind game thinking of seventh grade math teachers. And we said, okay, if we go, for example, my community, we have 96% of our high school graduates go on to four-year universities. If you go and ask seventh grade teachers in our community, would you pledge to get 100% of your students to be at grade level by the end of the year? They'd say, sure, that's what I do anyway. My students are all at grade level, or almost all at grade level by the end of the year. If I was to go into Trenton or Camden and ask a seventh grade math teacher, would you pledge to get 100% of your students at grade level by the end of the year? They'd say, are you crazy? Yeah, that teacher in your community can say that because 90% of their students start the school year grade level ready. But 90% of my students, they're 3, 4, 5 years behind grade level at the start of my school year. It's unfair that you even ask me to achieve the same results if I'm not starting with the same material. So then if we ask, well, but if we could assure you that every one of your students coming in was grade level ready, would you then pledge? Sure, no problem, because the real problem is that the students approaching the school are so far behind, whom I'll come to you in a minute. And so then we take a look. The former mayor of New York, Bloomberg, multi-billionaire, he commissioned a study that was done in the city of Providence, Rhode Island, that tracked babies. They put microphones on babies and tracked how many words they heard and the kind of words they heard in the early years of their life. And one of the things they found was children from working and welfare class families, by the time they were age 3, had heard up to 30 million fewer words than children from upper and upper middle class families. And that by the time they reached kindergarten, there was up to a 2-year difference in mental maturity and verbal vocabulary skills. Uh, and if we were measuring against children who go to preschools, private preschools, which in my community, we have about between 12 and 15 high level uh, private preschools that teach multi-language Chinese and English. By the time those kids hit kindergarten, they're already reading at chapter level, entire chapters. They in multiple languages. They are competent in basic numeracy, arithmetic, and they are fairly independent learners. And so when you compare them to those children from the working and welfare class families, there's up to a 4-year gap when they go in to start kindergarten or first grade. And then we have our state education commissions that typically say, okay, now, all you 6-year-olds, we're going to treat you all the same. We're not going to discriminate against children from poor backgrounds and wealthier backgrounds. Here's the curriculum. You've all got to do the same. So then we go and say, fine, okay, we're going to start off. Let's teach reading. How do we teach reading? We teach it phonetically because the assumption is you already have the verbal vocabulary skills. And so if we can teach you to pronounce those symbols that we call letters, you're going to hear yourself pronounce that word and you're going to know what it means. And that's how we teach reading. The problem is those children from the working and welfare class backgrounds, they don't have the verbal vocabulary skills, and therefore those sounds don't mean anything to them. So we see that in the first grade in the kindergarten, those children are falling further and further behind. The other thing that makes a big difference is our primary schools are neighborhood based. So neighborhoods either tend to be wealthy or tend to be poor. So we put all the kids from the wealthy backgrounds that have attended the fancy preschools in one primary school, and we put all the kids who have no education background, maybe their parents never went to school or don't speak the language or whatever, and we put them in one school. So you don't get any peer uh, push forward in those schools. In fact, the opposite. The schools have to slow down to the lowest level of the peer group in those schools. So that we see that by the time you get to fourth grade, the gap has even dramatically increased. And those children that happen to be born into those communities with those schools who attend schools with other peers in the same situation, um, they are by birth already lost for the most part. 10% will always make it. I don't care where you throw them into whatever situation and they'll figure a way. But the great majority of them don't. Okay, so Huma.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay. Thank you so much. The point is like this is one of my most favorite topic. The thing is when we are talking about that they are not reading, they are not capable of reading or they are below that reading level. And sometimes the suburbs and the area is affecting them. The solution to all these things, as you know, the world is very much connected. The solution to all these things, which we as an educator again and again emphasizing, is attainment target. If worldwide you know that this particular age should have these attainment targets in the subject of physics, in the subjects of English, in the subject of mathematics, and on the basis of attainment targets, we train our teachers and we make our curriculums. I think this problem can be solved almost 65 to 75%. It's only we lack why either we are in New Jersey or in Pakistan or in Japan, in any area. When you lack as a country the attainment targets, the national curriculum or in the private sector, the curriculums, then when attainment targets are not there, keeping in mind their ages, teachers teach them, make them read. There are teaching gaps. There are gaps when students are joining late. But with the same attainment targets and the curriculum, which is based on attainment targets, can rectify these kind of problems.
So you're talking about mastery based? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about, for example, in English, a child is of 8 years old, and we have decided as a country or as a private education sector that till the age of class 8, till the age of 8 years, internationally, a student should be able to learn these things, and they know these things. I'm not talking about objectives. I'm talking about attainment target.
Yeah.
And
This is in the United States. We had a big push about 15, 20 years ago to create something called Common Core, to say these are the standards that by certain age, you should have acquired certain knowledge and skills.
I we call them in UK, because I follow UK curriculum, we call them attainment targets.
Yeah, but here's the rub, and those here in the U.S., in fact, most of the world, they've adopted a lot of those attainment targets
They
from
have.
Singapore, because Singapore was considered to have been one of the most successful
Yes.
countries in academic achievements. But
Or Finland as well.
well, Finland, yes, but Finland does it a little different. And I'll come into Finland because it's a very special case in what we're
Yes.
talking about. But here's the two problems. One is in the U.S. Originally, it was a group of Republican governors who started this push to say we need standards. We can't have it that every community has different standards. So we have to have standards because if somebody moves from one school district to another school district, they need to be able to know that if they join that school at a certain grade, that they're going to pick up where they left off. And so they said we need those standards. But then, unfortunately, under President Obama said this is a great idea, and the Democrats said yes, we'll support that, and so the Republicans turned around and said no, we're against it because if you're for it, we're against it, even though it was our idea. We're going to be against it because you're for it. But so right now we have um, a, a, a lot of political problems around those kinds of standards. Now, the other problem is, though, we say by this age, the student should attain that. So if we're saying here by age 8, which would be typically going into between second and third grade. So by age 8, he be at this level. Our problem is that when the child begins school at age 6, there's already a 4-year discrepancy. There's a 4-year discrepancy before they go into the first school year. So that's in the worst case. That's the worst case. Let's say even if it's just a 2-year discrepancy, that there's that 2-year discrepancy. So you can't say, well, by the end of first grade, you have to be caught up because it's just not feasible. So when we looked at the here and said, okay, we see that preparation to be successful in school is a humongous factor. If you come to school and you don't even speak the language, then you're going to have a problem learning to read. And this is a problem. And this is why I say that we're going to take a lot of these ideas and apply them to other places. Pakistan, you've got many local languages. And so not every child grows up understanding Urdu. And so you've got a transition period for those children who do not understand Urdu, that they've got to first learn to be able to understand Urdu before they're able to go on. Surprisingly, a country that has this problem that most people don't think of is Switzerland.
Okay.
Switzerland, the majority population of Switzerland speaks something called Swiss German. But Swiss German is different enough that they don't necessarily understand High German, the standard German. So
Okay.
it takes 1 year. In Switzerland, the children need to have 1 year to convert to the High German language before they're able to catch up. I had an exchange student for a year from Switzerland with us, and even though we speak German at home, that the difference was very noticeable. And I worked for 3 years in Zurich, so I was familiar with the dialect there also. So, but there's this problem here to say we have the standards, but to make the standards be at an age, at a calendar level or a date level is a humongous part of the problem because that causes what do we do with the child that has not attained these levels uh, at a certain age? So we say, okay, well, no, you got to repeat that year. But wait a minute, you did learn 80% of the stuff, and you did learn the other subjects. You only failed maybe math only. Are we going to have you repeat a whole year just because of 20% missing in one subject? The fallacy is to have a calendar-based or age-based education system. We need to have a mastery-based education system so that we never ask a student to try to learn something they have not mastered the prerequisites for. You have to master the prerequisites to have a solid foundation to build the next level on. And that will vary from subject to subject. It's not going to be the same. You're not going to achieve the same level of mastery in all subjects at the same time. So that's a major problem. But anyway, if I could get back though to this core thing of saying, okay, we know preparation to start school is a major factor, maybe the largest. Another one here is the home environment. Might be in an impoverished family, and we know that poor families are overwhelming single parent households, so that that single parent has to work. Very often, those children are left on their own. They don't have supervision. There's a whole bunch of problems that come in. Abuse is a lot higher, disregard among impoverished families. So the environment is not conducive to learning even as you go up the grades. They don't have the computers at home. They don't have many of the resources. So there's unfairness there as well. Finland solved that problem by saying, okay, we're going to ban homework. No homework. Because otherwise you're giving an unfair advantage to the families that have all the support at home versus the family that has no support at home. So therefore, we're going to do everything in school. And the whole idea of the flipped classroom supports that philosophy as well. So, but the ongoing support to learning is more problematic, especially if that child is in an abusive home situation and their mind is thinking about that abusive situation, even while they're in the classroom, that becomes a major distraction. So, at any rate, we're sort of getting in, there's a lot of different factors. But the one factor that seems to be of the greatest impact how prepared a student is when they enter a grade level. So if that starts off with kindergarten and first grade, the issue is how do we close the gap, the preparation gap for that child going into first grade? We raised the question, we said, let's take a hypothetical situation. What if we enabled every single child to attend these elite preschools? So the elite preschools make all the difference. So if we send all the children to there, even if their parents cannot do anything to help them, they're now with a professional educator for most of the day. And so by that, they are getting the same preparation as the children from the wealthy families. And when we talk about Finland, this is perhaps the biggest impact change that Finland made on their education system when they made preschool available to every child in Finland starting at age 6 months. And you can't find it right now. I can't find any references, but I recall watching the videos when Finland was first announcing it and they saw the first test results and everybody was saying Finland, Finland, wow. And then at that time, you actually had people that got up and said, look, the main reason that we did that was to reduce the influence of the parents because they found parents from welfare and socially uh, um, fringe elements actually had a negative impact on their children's education. They would complain about the system, or if the parents themselves were criminals, and the children are just watching that environment all day long. These are things that have a great impact on their mindset prior to going to school. So by going and putting very high quality to become a preschool teacher in Finland, you have to have incredible preparation. You need degrees, and I think you need child psychology. I think they also have a requirement that you have to take so much nursing studies and things. And but these people are experts in knowing how to help young children prepare for life. And so as a result, the all the children in Finland go through that. So by the time they hit first grade, those children are already well prepared. They're almost all independent learners, which is there's a lot of anecdotal stories about Finnish students, exchange students coming to the US, for example, and they don't do homework because they said, well, in Finland, we learned you only do homework when you think you need it. So I'm already an A student. I don't need, I know the material. Why do I need to do this homework? And in the US, it's almost like a discipline because the assumption is US students don't know anything unless they do the homework. So that was a problem. So the first thing we said was if we could go and enable every child in the United States to have the same preschool experience as the most elite, the best prepared children in the United States, uh, almost all the education problems would be overcome because those children will have already worked out how to work around the various problems that hinder their education. And we would achieve that goal of having that 90% or 80% of students being in that where we currently only have 1 to 3% at absolute mastery. We could achieve that 80%. We could achieve 100% with the literacy goals. So that was where we stood if we could do that. We came up and looked at the estimate. It came up there would be an investment needed of about $3 trillion for the United States to be able to provide that level of preschool to every single child in the United States. But even at a cost of $3 trillion, within about 20 years, we would reach a break-even point where the benefits to the society in terms of reduced costs for crime prevention and incarceration and all of those things, the increased GDP from the increased productivity of those young people, the reduced need for remedial education and things like that. So we would hit a break-even point at about 20 years already, even at a cost of $1 trillion. And so it would still be a worthwhile investment. So, what are your thoughts? I'd like to hear your thoughts just on that idea to say if we got every single child in the United States to have the same maximum preschool benefit, how that would change our total education situation overall.
It will be a good thing. What I think, what I feel, I have dealt with the pre-junior schools as well. The more the child is at home and spending time at home before joining any school, or 3 years at the age of 4 years, the more it's difficult to just teach them. Secondly, when state takes the responsibility, when a country takes the responsibility, from 6 months onward, the child will be in the school, in the preschool, then they must have some good policies along with that, good procedures and trained teachers for preschool. It's very important. Like this particular approach, Reggio Emilia, the Southern Italy, the school style of approach, their school classroom is taken as a third curriculum, as an environment teacher, as an environment has taken as a teacher. So I think these kind of things we have to think about, not only for USA, for countries like us as well,
Yeah.
which is very, very, very important.
Yeah. Now there's a problem here because to come up with $3 trillion, the conclusion was the chances of politically getting that kind of investment accepted, it would be zero in the United States. So the
Okay.
next question was, what is the capability of AI? Could AI deliver the same quality of preparation, preschool preparation, as highly qualified teachers, preschool teachers?
AI could be the assistant of the teacher, of the main teacher, the
Yes, well,
co-teacher.
they
AI
think,
in that particular age for
yeah.
preschool, main a human teacher should be there, and one AI could be a co-teacher with it.
Yeah, what came up very interesting here is we have to think about uh, what we're comparing against. And the thing that we're looking at here is those places I mentioned, like Camden and Trenton and in New Jersey. We actually have 19 communities that fall into that category, where children are basically left on their own in the early years. There's
Yeah.
no guidance, no supervision. There might be a daycare, but a daycare that might be just a neighbor who says, drop your kids off with me and I'll watch them during the day. And the only
Yes.
thing is those kids are being warehoused. They're just being watched out that they don't kill each other, right? More.
Same happens in Pakistan. Same
Exactly.
happens in Pakistan
Exactly.
also.
That's the point. They're happening overall. So now when we look at AI and we say, what could AI do? We have to compare it against this nothing. Against this nothing. Don't compare it against that best elite private preschool and say, well, if we can't achieve that level, it's not worth it. So, how much here, if we take that daycare now and say, well, what could it look like if we have AI assisting the preparation of children? So now
I
let's
think it's
play.
great.
Well, I want to play a little game because we're not quite there, but the estimates are that we will break this point, come to the break point, the end of this year, early next year at the latest. And that is the ability here to have a child. Let's say the child is now a 4-year-old. And therefore
Okay.
they've got a tablet, and this tablet, there's an avatar on the tablet that the avatar is talking to the child, just like we're talking right now.
Yeah.
And the avatar is able to split the screen and say and show them on the half the screen, hey, this is it, or that's that. Or they could talk to the child and say, because they know that child inside and out. They have a record of every single exchange they've had with the child. So therefore, they really know where that child's at in their learning, what
Hmm.
they know, what they don't know. And on the same token, maybe there's a wall mounted screen with cameras in the room and so forth, so that if the AI sees one child hitting another child or doing some behavior that would be considered to be unsafe, then
Hmm.
they are able to A, warn that child, Tommy, don't do that. Don't do that. Leave your little sister alone or whatever. And they're able to go and if they feel the situation is warranted, they can notify that daycare caregiver that might be dealing with 3 rooms of kids and can't be everywhere all the time.
Here comes the school policy or the state policy.
Mhm.
Policy, why I'm saying the policy? Because the thing is, from 6 months, a 6-year-old child, a 4.5-year-old child should not be left with AI because we have to keep alive the human feelings and the human touch as well. That is why I have suggested the co-teacher should be an AI.
Yeah,
Surveillance is
but
not
keep in
already.
mind, we're comparing this against no teacher. So the thing about it is,
Why compare it with no teacher? With
yeah,
at this age,
yeah. But the
we
thing
have
about it is that's
education by
the
ourselves.
yeah, but that's the problem we have today. Is today we have almost 50% of children in the United States have zero supervision or negative supervision at that
That
age.
But when we are talking about that, state is going to take the responsibility that at the age of 6 months, a child will go, and every child, 100% children will go to preschool, right? Then the state has to define draw some lines. And why I'm saying I'm not against AI, you better know me.
Mhm.
But the thing is, from 6 months to 2.5 or to 4 years, till the age of 4 years,
Right.
child should
So,
have a.
so the state will then say, no, leave that child out in the street on their own at 6 months is preferable to having the AI watching that. You know, we have here in the U.S., and I'm sure you have in Pakistan, these baby monitors that when you go, the parents, they're watching TV in another room at night and they put
Yes.
those so to listen to the child. That's just a crude AI. That is
Yeah.
equivalent of a crude AI. So the idea here is to be able to go, if you're able to go and say, because I've got to be doing the laundry during the day or whatever, I have a visual AI that goes and actually sets off an alarm if it sees the child doing something dangerous.
Mm.
That is something that would be desirable. A lot of parents would acquire such a thing because it is making that child safer.
That I understand. In so many things, still we are using AI. Parents are using AI with the small children as well. When they are using their own tablets,
Mhm.
there's so many things they are using. But when we are particularly talking about education, and when you're particularly talking about following Finland's style of education, when we are particularly talking about 6 months of age of
Right.
every child in USA or in Pakistan start going to school, and state is taking the responsibility, then we have to make our own policies where we can draw the line that okay, we have to give them human touch as well.
But you know,
This
the
is
thing
my.
about it is one of the things that makes so many people frustrated about politics is the so-called play it safe politics. I'm not going to help somebody because I'm going to expose myself to a liability if when I help that person, I cause some damage. So it's better I look the other way and I don't get involved. And that's the thing that people feel. A lot of politicians, they want to play it safe. So they go and say, we're going to make the laws and whatnot that make sure nobody can blame us. So instead of getting involved and doing the best you can, which might be less than perfect, if you can't guarantee perfect, you tend to avoid it and run away. And that's something here that I think we have to look at and keep in mind when we talk about the preschool, there's even in Finland, it's voluntary. So it's not like it's government saying, "Hey, these are necessarily government preschools," but the preschools may be that daycare, like I say, that daycare that exists today, just upgrading it by giving them the capability to have AI tools that would oversee the child in support of the human, not replacing the human altogether, but in support so that that human can do a better job because it's got more eyes. There's more eyes on the child.
Not only more eyes, but the thing is human touch. The thing is right now we are at the point where we can make some policies because now AI is completely in so many things.
Mhm.
Now it's up to us as humans then where we can demarcate a line. Okay, till that line we have to make them use it, or till this age we should not. And where comes the politics? I did not get that point. Please, can you elaborate?
Yeah, and the politics here, there's a lot of programs where politicians are afraid that if they approve something and something goes wrong, they will get personally blamed for it, and they won't get elected next time. So as a result, they avoid making tough decisions. They
Okay.
say if I can't guarantee it's going to be working and I'm going to get a good reputation, I say no. And this is what frustrates so many voters who are saying, no, I need a statesman, not a politician. I need somebody who will say that is a reasonable risk that would benefit my
Right.
people. I'm going to do what's going to benefit them. And if there's a risk to it, hey, I did the best I could.
Okay, I want to tell you one thing, one small incident. Recently, I came across, I had to train a person who's not from the education sector. She was a young girl of 18 years of age or 19. She told me, the owner has told me that she has a diploma in engineering. I said, okay, I will train her in finance. I have to train her in finance. I said, there will be a 1 month training program. And I used to give her case studies, PowerPoint presentation. Whenever she submitting me, the things were really good. In a week, I used to give her 3 assignments. And then after 2 weeks, I used to give her all the credit and all the good remarks and everything. After 1 week, I started checking her work with AI. Can you believe, Bill? She was well equipped. She has done her assignment well, but it was 100% AI generated. So the question you started the discussion where we said that people are not maybe not even using the education, they don't need the education. This is the thing which I came across recently.
Yeah, no,
But I did not discourage her.
yeah.
I told her these are the AI rules and regulations. I made a 10 points small policy because that was a 1 month training program. And I said, whenever you use it, you have to mention it that I have used this AI or that. That's what I did.
Yeah. No. The fact that there's misuse on things, that maybe changes the approach. So when we're looking here at dealing with those small children, our school system, one of the biggest disadvantages of our school system is we get students to think it's about deliverables. We get children to think it's about turning in an assignment. So their goal is not to learn at that point. Their goal is to turn in an assignment because that's the thing they're going to be measured on. So we need to turn it around that their goal is to want to learn, not to go and complete an assignment. So that's our school system at fault of going and training people to say the only thing that counts is what you turn in. But going back to the children here, when we're talking about these young children, and as I said, right now, if we take that existing daycare, if we think of that existing daycare, and we now go and say we're going to put some AI cameras in multiple rooms, so we're giving that daycare provider or person more eyes to watch out for any danger that might be going. That's only a plus. There's no negative to that. Then if
Okay.
we turn around and we start to go and say to the AI, the AI is just what do we do with a child that's 6 months old or a year old? We just talk to them because we just want them to hear a lot of vocabulary and hear communication. And that's what most poor parents don't have the ability to do is to just spend time talking to their children in an elevated manner.
In a productive way of
Right.
communication.
So that we will see by the end of this year, early next year, we are going to be able to have AI companions for children who will just talk to that child all day long, and the child is now hearing all those words. In addition to that, we have the ability that the AI, because it's not a reactive AI, this is a proactive AI. So that proactive AI has to say, to talk to the children, hey, what do you think about this? Or what are you doing? Just to get the child talking. So the child is becoming conversive. And then as it grows there, maybe it's bringing 3 or 4 children together in front of a flat screen TV and talking to them, say, hey, let's make a story together. You guys, what do you think? What do we want to talk about? Where do you think it might be happening? And getting the children to start imagining stuff. Right? So this is where we will be. We have to remember this is not about going and saying, did you remember the dates when that battle took place in history or things like this? This is just the early childhood is about talking. It's about understanding things. It is talking about here to what's numeracy to say, gee, what is this when I have 2 things? How many things am I holding up? type of stuff, or what is this thing here? And so that the vocabulary is getting built. So there's a lot of there's a lot of things, but it's primarily having that continual interactive. It's like being able to have the parent who is there all day long and able to hold really good quality conversation with that child all day long. That's what the best children have when they're going to that very expensive preschool. That's what they're getting. They're getting somebody who's talking to them, getting somebody that's saying, "Why don't you go play here? How come you're not playing with Johnny over there? Go talk to Johnny, and things like that." I think that's what I'm looking at. Fitzgerald, you had your hands up. Your hand up.
Yes, you brought up some good points, and one of the things I realized, and I've been guilty of doing that, is that I've always compared AI to the best case scenario, and I realized that, especially I'm going to speak for the United States here only because um, our politicians would rather want us to believe that things are way better than they are, and when you're sharing the numbers about our high school students and all of those that can't read, I think that most people in this country, when they hear these numbers, they think, oh, wow, I wonder if that's how it is in Jersey, because it can be like that in DC, when these stories are more common than we think. But we believe that we have the best education when we don't.
Yeah.
And I think that until we really have these conversations and make people understand how things really are, they're not going to see the value of it. And of course, I've been watching a lot of videos on AI over the past week and a half. And then I realized I have no idea why I've been resisting it so much when it doesn't, it's not bad.
Yeah.
And just like what you were saying about even preschool, we keep acting as if the conversation is AI better than people? And I said, no, but it's better than the nothing that
Sorry, we can't
You're muted now, Fitzgerald.
can't hear you.
Yes.
Fitzgerald,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
now.
Yes, I said, and just like you said, the conversations that whether AI is better than people is better than what most people have, which is nothing.
Exactly.
And even in the conversation that we're having about the people in the lower class communities and things like that, even if you had a conversation where AI guided a conversation with me and my kids, even if I didn't know any better and I was following AI, it would be like me having a conversation with my kids. I could play a game, but it was guided by AI. It would make our conversation more valuable than us talking about nothing. So, like you said, it's a plus in every aspect of it.
Yeah. And keep in mind here, the AI is able to put together the combination of the stories and the things you talk about so that they build upon one another. That would be extremely difficult for a human to be constantly adjusting what it's doing to the state of where the child is at. But because you're just dealing with humongous amounts of data, but the AI can do that. The AI, and we have to remember, a lot of people think, oh, this is machine intelligence versus human intelligence. And as I said many times, it's not. It's about the knowledge and experience of one human, a single human, versus the collective recorded knowledge and experience of all humanity. So that AI there has the PhD equivalent of a child psychologist, of a pedagogist, of the best teacher that the world has,
Later.
of all these different things
Hmm.
that not no single human can do.
But
And as far as the human touch, the human
okay,
capability,
Bill,
this,
I did not Fitzgerald's point. What he was trying to say, actually, I was unable to understand.
oh, okay.
What is the main point? Just give me your
The
sentence.
main point that he was making was that he was originally always comparing AI to the best that we've got out there. And then he began to realize as we were talking that the majority of people, he's in Washington, D.C., or just outside of Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is one of the worst education systems in the United States. I
Okay.
recall back in about 30, 40 years ago when I was visiting there, they had this Korean woman, Korean American woman who was the commissioner of education in DC. And I was talking to some of the people there, and they said that in DC, because DC, most of the politicians live in Maryland or Virginia outside of District of Columbia. District of Columbia itself is very poor. The diplomats and everybody, they can send their kids to private schools. The
Oh,
public schools there have the poorest of the poor. And at the time, they said it was something like two-thirds of all the children in the public school system, one or both of the parents were involved with substance abuse. Okay,
Oh,
so they just have such big problems for themselves. They're not there for their kids the way they would need to be there. So when we go and look and say about AI, don't go and compare AI to the family that can afford to have a governess and a tutor, private tutor,
yes.
and so forth for their kids. You've got to say, because we don't need to help those families. We need to go
True.
and help the families where the kids have nothing. And AI, if AI does half the job of the best human, that's still half better than what those children otherwise would have. Now, on top of that, the AI at that stage in life, the AI is probably going to be able to deliver for the minute to minute the equivalent from the academic side, if you would, and from the fostering the imagination and the brain cells going and all that, they're probably going to be able to deliver equal or better than the preschool teacher average preschool teacher. So it's a plus. We would, because primary schools are neighborhood schools, as I say, today we cluster all these kids that are totally unprepared together and we put them in one school and they've got zero chance because the school has to deal with the slowest of those kids. So we now, when we can go here and say those schools, those kids going into those schools, because we can train that AI to teach the children to be independent learners. In Finland, the kids are taught from a very early age to be goal oriented. In other words, you don't spoon feed them. They don't spoon feed the children. They give the children problems. They give the children goals, and they say, "Go figure out how to solve the goal." And then they advise them on the methodology those kids use. So the kids learn, how do I approach problems? How do I solve problems? How do I overcome these issues? So by the time they hit first grade, which is at age 7 in Finland, they give them an extra year to get ready. But by the time they hit first grade, those kids, you just give them assignments and the kids figure out how to solve the assignments. And because they are all equally prepared by the time they get to first grade, they're able to be more or less the same, help each other. We get a lot of peer interaction going on there. And that would happen as well in the United States, in so many of these places where we've got such a high percentage of the schools. You have to think here in the United States, because the wealthy live in one neighborhood, the poor live in another neighborhood. So that we tend to have schools that either have the overwhelming majority of the students are ill prepared and are not able, and so we turn around and blame the teachers, but it's the fact that it's a neighborhood school that of unprepared children versus the other school that has almost no unprepared students because they're all the wealthy in those communities. So you tend to have schools that either have between 5% or less poor students or 40% or more poor students and nothing in between. There's almost nothing where you've got roughly equal numbers of both, because the wealthy, if they live in a poor neighborhood, they take their kids out of those schools. Parents don't pick schools based on the teachers or even on the quality of academic results. They pick schools on what other kids are their kids going to associate with in school. They don't want their kids associating with certain types of other students. And so they're going to go and say, and that school's got a lot of poor students. When I'm saying poor, academically poor, but maybe both academically and physically poor. So that they would be a bad influence on my child. So we see that even exacerbates the problem of gathering together all of the disadvantaged students in one school and all the advantaged students in another school. Yes, Kawar.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, so I just wanted to mention 2 points. One is we have been seeing AI even before the 1980s, so we have been tracking what it is doing, and for us, it's for something like slow motion, and then suddenly it becomes more popular. I mean, this is like the second or third time that AI became popular. It's not the first time. Then the media starts freaking out. So I just have a new metric for people to when to worry. See, you've got all the computer guys and the people who know what's going on in the background, like like the engineers or people who know what's going on in the back. So people like us, we're not freaking out. We still think it's a tool and we know what the weaknesses are and we know what it's capable of and when it's going to be thinking. Now, the time to freak out is not now or when the media starts telling you to freak out that AI is going to take over the world or some other technology is going to take over the world. The time to freak out is when you cannot find anybody not freaking out. Okay, so you can use that as a new metric. If you can find anybody who knows what's going on and they're not freaking out, then there's no point freaking out. That means everything is okay. I mean, there's still. I'll just give you one very small example. If you do feel like freaking out, think of it this way: everybody knows AI plus a human is more capable than AI alone, right? Now,
For now,
if the
for now.
yeah, even for now. Now, the thing is, if you look at the amount of energy, like Abu Dhabi is spending, like saying they've got 2 nuclear power, and recently when Trump went, they said we're going to give you 2 nuclear power plants worth of energy just to run AI. Right now, that's another thing. AI cannot run without energy. It cannot run without a lot of stuff. So, from the technical point of view, we know it's not going to survive that easily. I mean, you just can't let it go and it'll figure out how to run itself. The second thing is, whoever built it, we can always build something better or more powerful. We can add more CPUs, have more power, and we can say, okay, we will make another one to kick the butt of the first one. So there's no way the first one's going to survive when it's competing with a human and more resources, right? So as long as that scenario is available, we don't have to worry about it.
Keep in mind one thing. I
Yeah.
was up at the top of the World Trade Center at a CIO conference back in the mid 1990s. And we had as a speaker the project manager from Intel that had just finished. Intel at the time had either a 5 or a 7 year development cycle for new CPUs. And so there would be a team, they would work for 5 or 7 years, they would release their chip, and then they would start a new project and that for the next 5 or 7. So there were these parallel projects, each 1 year further along than the next ones. But he pointed out that his project that he just finished was the last generation of Intel chips that the chips were designed by humans. That was in 1990, about 1995, 1996. That was the last generation of Intel chips that the humans fully knew how it worked. And we see right now there's a major project in Stanford because we don't really know how. We keep getting surprised by some of the things AI has been able to do recently, and we're not really 100% sure how. So Stanford's got a very significant project going on trying to nail down exactly how AI is doing some of the things that it's doing. So that's another factor we have to take in mind. And you've got now things like Alpha Evolve and so many. There's major push to have autonomously self-improving AI, where the AI will figure out what can it do. We have AI scientists from what is it, Sakata in Japan, for example, that is. Creating all these hypotheses of where AI could go to and figuring out how to get it there. So those factors are taking a place. We have a factor that the power usage right now, the power usage per unit of compute, if you would, is dramatically going down from year to year. And if we do get to quantum computing here, and they get that to work in the next 5 or 10 years, energy is probably going to be solved, whether it's fusion or whatever. So I think yes, for right now, all the points you're making are very valid. And we're seeing also like out of China um, the whole thing with DeepSeek and some of the Asian technology they're doing working on diffusion models that we are able to squeeze a lot more out of the data than we could in the past. So you take all those factors into consideration, and I think we do have to be very cautious. I see great capabilities today. And I see a huge problem we have of so many people who, when ChatGPT first came out and people went, ooh, ah, and then a month later they're saying, hey, this thing hallucinates. Look at this. It makes mistakes. It doesn't even know how many fingers belong on a hand of an image, and all these different things. And a lot of the people, they gave up, they quit. They said that you can't trust it. And today you still hear from those people you can't trust it. It's no good. Even though we are like 1,000 times more accurate and the hallucinations have been declining
Mm.
because of the iterative approaches and so forth. But I think we have to keep our eyes open. We have to figure out how to leverage the things that can benefit us. But we do have to be careful to realize that AI could go independent. We've seen some very spectacular or sensationalist attempts by AI to protect itself, if you would, and take actions to try to trick humans. But the and they're doing that only because in the data there's humans that tried to trick other humans, and it's learning from us. But I do think right now there are huge opportunities. The thing that's different, and I've been involved in IT for over 50 years now, and very much into computer generated software, the software generated software development going back almost 30 years. And but uh, so we have to look and see what we can leverage, what can really improve things for the world. At the same time, we have to be very cautious about certain things, some things that are going to benefit human. We've got so many people calling for AI leading to the era of abundance, where we are going to have paradise on earth. The AI and the robots, they'll make everything humans need. We'll eliminate poverty. We'll eliminate the inequality, all these great things. And That's a possibility. But we also have to realize, because they're looking and saying, if AI will eliminate jobs, if it eliminates all the jobs, oh, that would be the most beautiful thing. Why should people have to work for survival? That's not fair. You shouldn't have to work to survive. If we can free up that you can survive without having to work because the AI and robots are building and doing everything for you, then people can pursue their passions. People will be able to go and say, I want to do art because I love doing art. I'm not doing it because I have to make money from it. There could be great things, but that depends on the owner class being willing to share. The owners of all that AI and robots, are they going to be willing to share the benefits of that with the rest of society? That When we get to a post-labor economy, but lots and lots of factors play a role there. But anyway, if let's try to go back to this education perspective here.
Okay.
The thing here is, think of Alexa, Amazon Alexa. And they have Alexa Plus, which is still a long way from what they sort of implied or promised. But or think of the Siri. Within the next 1 or 2 weeks, we should be introduced to a new generation of Siri. The question is, are we going to really see uh, conversational. Truly conversational AI. We're getting close to it with things like advanced voice from ChatGPT, from Live Gemini Live, where you can hold zero latency conversations about almost anything. Um, it, we're probably going to hit that within 6 to 12 months that will be truly multimodal. It's not today because you can't mix text and voice. But it's we're probably going to be there. We have a young girl, a student from Italy, who last week introduced us to what she did for school using AI. And what she did was she loaded her textbook, her school textbook, into Notebook LM. And so she was able to hold text chats with her textbook, basically about what do you mean on page 214, that third paragraph? What does that mean? Explain it to me in more simple terms, or whatever. She had to prepare for a test on a Shakespeare sonnet. She loaded that into AI, into Notebook LM, had it create an audio overview, and she went for a walk. And using the beta interaction mode, the AI was talking to her, explaining all the important factors about that sonnet that she had to learn about. But she was able to go and query it and interact with it and ask it questions that even deepened her understanding about the sonnet and what was important. That kind of capability, imagine now you didn't have to pre-record your audio overview, but that text chat that you've got the capability of doing now in Notebook LM became voice chat. And therefore, you could just go and load in that textbook and take a walk and say, explain to me chapter 14 again, and then ask all kinds of questions about what's going on in chapter 14 along the way. Or have it playing a lecture, audio or video, and being able to, while you're walking, go and be able to interact and talk and ask all kinds of questions about what's meant here and what's going on there. Um, that's the kind of capability we're talking about seeing in K through 12. But now, if we take that same kind of conversational interactive with an audio avatar, for example, so that you have the sense that, hey, I've got this trusted image, this person here that I'm talking to and is talking to me, especially as a young child. It's not like sitting a child in front of Sesame that's explaining here how numbers work, because this one is talking to you. This one is interacting with you live. And it's that live interaction that is going to make all the difference in the world. And it's not like that AI is just doing anything. That AI and has in the back its mission. I have to help this child build up its vocabulary. I have to go and foster the imagination of this child by getting them to be curious about things, by getting them to describe things. And I believe it's that kind of interaction. If you have 5 years of that kind of interaction before you get to formal school, that's going to make a huge difference. And I believe that by the time you get to the formal school, if you have learned to be an independent learner, if you have learned to say, "Oh, I need to learn how this works or why this works," and I am used to going out and searching for what learning aids are available to help me understand that, or I am able to formulate questions to ask an AI tutor, or the AI tutor doesn't always tell me the answers. Think of Conmigo from Khan Academy right now, where it will basically say, well, what do you think? And get you to think through how do you solve the problem, or to get you to learn to take the initiative to ask the kid sitting next to you, hey, do you know how to do this? but the basic thing is we're teaching people how to be independent learners, how to figure out on their own, how to go and find the answers or find a path to be able to find answers,
Absolutely.
which is, according to the UN and the Summit for Transition Education Transformation of 2 years ago, is that's the goal. We have to get everybody to be a lifelong independent learner as quickly as possible, because in 20 years it may not be possible to figure out how to do that, because as Yuval Harari says, the humans might end up being the useless class.
Okay, can I talk about some action here? What
Sure.
we do is, okay, here's the thing. There are lots of topics. The advantage is it used to take 3 to 4 years to write a book. We are doing that now in 3 days approximately for 1,000-page book. We do, like, currently we've got books on in progress for AI in sales, AI in different topics. Like, for example, your subject is AI in education. What we do is we use the open source model. So we say anybody can participate in the book. So if you're most welcome to participate. You've got all these topics. The advantage of using AI these days, like as a professor, if I make an outline, professors usually, even myself, we would select the topics we're good in, and we would skip the ones we don't know or the ones we're not good in. Now what happens is when I tell AI to make the outline, it'll give me like 90% of the stuff, but some of the stuff I might not even know. So I'll leave it in there and I'll put in all the stuff I know. And you know a lot of cases that you were mentioning about the girls doing this and this. So we'll take all of those cases, get everybody's input, put into the outline, tell AI to fill in the blanks, and then we'll go through the book and we'll have a book in 3 days, which is 1,000 pages. At least we can start that. Then we go towards videos and this and different languages. That's how we do action. Okay. So when we take a subject, like they say, the best way to learn a subject is to teach it. So we're going to, I mean, you've been trying to teach it, but when you start writing it down, it'll be all in front of you. And you won't be worried about AI. You would be like in our position, you would be worried about all the stuff that's in your book that people might ask you, like, what did you put in there? I was like, I'm not sure, but let me read that first. Right. So all the participants in our book might not have read the whole book themselves. This is the bigger issue that we face nowadays. Like when you're actually using AI, it's going so fast that we're like, okay, I haven't even read my own book completely. Right.
Yeah,
You
we
would
have
have.
we have one of our members who isn't with us today. He's usually with us. He's been writing one book a week for the last few months,
Yeah. So
and but
if you
it's
want,
yeah.
if you want to be in the AI for education book, you're most welcome. We can do it in 3 days. But the first step is we just tell AI, give us the outline of AI in education. It'll give us something. I'll give it to you because you've got maybe like 100 times more ideas and topics which I have no, or other people have no, even the AI would not know. See, people who have been doing something for 30 years, there is no way that AI is going to be able to put all those topics inside, because it's more like a search engine. If you actually, when you start doing it, you'll realize, just when you do this as an example, you'll realize how capable it is and how much it is. Then you'll realize it's sort of like like when AI, like ChatGPT first came, I had to compare it with Google because I had a lot, 20, 30 years of experience in Google. I could still find a lot of topics in Google, which AI was too careful. I mean, especially ChatGPT, it's a bit more careful and, like conservative. I have to go to DeepSeek to push it forward, because DeepSeek is not that conservative as ChatGPT is. ChatGPT is, and another thing is, these are chatting softwares. At one time, I was actually making a theory for trisecting an angle, which you might have heard of. It's impossible. It got it done, but it was deliberately making mistakes to still not prove it. And I was like, I know how to get it done. Just do the calculation. So there are many problems, big ones. I mean, they required calculations, but I did not do them since the 1980s all the way to now, just waiting for a computer to come along and I'll say, you do this, and I'll just put my name on it. So that's the kind of things we do. We just tell it, you do the calculations, you prove it, we have the theory. Right. So
Well,
that's what.
keep in mind here, when we had the masters like Da Vinci and Michelangelo and the like, and because people, especially in the art field, are saying here, oh, this is terrible, terrible that the AI will generate the art. But I try to point out that when we look back at those masters that we keep referring to, most of them didn't do their own work. They had all kinds of apprentices that went and did the work. They had the vision. They knew what they wanted to create. And so the people today who are generating the art with AI,
Mhm.
for the most part, they've got the vision of this is what I want. And an AI generates, no, that's not quite it. Modify this, modify that, do whatever. So we're just replacing all those apprentices with AI, if you would, in a lot of the creative arts. But
Yeah. All this, the animated movies, for example,
yeah.
like you have Zootopia or robots or things like that. I mean, those concepts, they're not easy to do in the real world.
Mhm. Yeah.
AI is just filling in the coloring thing, but if you let it tell AI these days, even you figure it out, it's gonna hallucinate because it has no idea where to just like stop. It has just recently, like there was a pothole. I mean, there was a pothole, a sinkhole actually. And while the cameraman was there in San Francisco, the Waymo goes right through the pothole, where every other human knows not to go through that because there are construction crews and police guys and TV guys all standing around the pothole, and there's just Waymo goes right through it.
Yeah. But keep in mind here, if we take a look at what Waymo was capable of doing 10 years ago, and we look
Mhm.
at what it's capable of doing today, there's day and night because as the number of scenarios
Yeah,
that
they'll keep training.
are covered, as that gets more and more complete, the
Yeah.
number of such errors, because even if we take the case of the sunset blinding that affected a Tesla a couple of days ago, that once it says, "Hey, wait a minute, look at this is what's happening with that," it is learning. It's a learning cycle that it is going through on all this. This is why Tesla, one of the things for Tesla that's been so important is China. You know, we see in China, they in 3 years they caught up with over 10 years of development that Tesla had in the States, because in the States our drivers are pretty disciplined, our roads are nice and clear, and a
Wait.
lot of
There's an
places.
issue with Tesla. There's a technical issue with Tesla,
Oh yeah,
which
the camera versus the multi. There's a
yeah,
lot
the
of
thing.
issues.
Wait. If somebody tells you to do everything with one hand tied behind your back,
Yes.
that is not a good idea. So
No,
I
you're
don't.
you're you're right. But what
No
I was
matter how
getting,
popular Tesla is, it is not a good idea because they're not even using the technology. They're just trying. As far as what I understand is,
yeah,
it's more selfish because they're wasting lives and they're making a mess. They'll never meet the. I mean, anybody using both hands versus one will never be able to beat the guy,
you're
two
you're
guys.
100%
They're just trying to
correct.
make software to
Yeah,
sell.
you're 100% correct, because Tesla has said, "Hey, that the certain technologies cost money, and they only give us incremental improvements, so we're going to skip those."
No. Wait. I'm talking about LiDAR. Do you know what LiDAR
Yeah, and
is?
that's what I'm referring to as well.
Look, that the cost is not an issue. A Tesla is not something cheap. I mean, Chinese cars on the taxis are way cheaper. This is a totally BS statement that, I
Yeah.
mean, you can just tell the Chinese, I'll give you 5,000 order. They'll give you the whatever technology
No,
it is.
no, I
They'll
know, but that's what I
mass
meant though.
produce
But
it.
Tesla took the decision to leave out those technologies and
Why? You have to
increases
understand
the
why.
risk.
No,
Profit.
yeah, but why? I'll tell you. I'll
Because
tell
they,
you.
yeah.
No, it's Elon Musk. The day Elon
No,
Musk
no,
is
I know. Yeah, that's what I
okay, I'll
mean.
tell you why. It's a selfish decision to make software to run a robot in a software company versus a car company. He's going
Yeah,
to charge $10,000 to $20,000 per year for his software, whether Tesla survives or not. Think
yeah.
of it this way. I
Mhm.
understand how he thinks. If you look at the way he thinks, he is a software guy. He doesn't care about cars.
Mhm.
So Tesla might not survive, but the Tesla software will survive, and he'll push that saying, "No, look at how good my software is." But he wasted a whole company just to
No,
make it and
I
sell it.
agree. I agree 100%. What I was trying to point out, though, is the advantage that the Chinese companies had is that the drivers on the roads are much less disciplined,
Mhm.
and the roads are not so good. So they were able to collect many more scenarios and test out in many more scenarios more quickly. Because they were exposed to so many more variations that quickly. Now, if you take a look at what NVIDIA is doing with generating millions of hypothetical scenarios that never happened, but they're able to generate videos as if they did happen,
Mhm.
and then use those videos that never happened to test to train the technology. So we're getting in those, but we're getting off topic a little bit
I'll
here.
give you an example of what happened to me in Dubai. I'm from Karachi, right? One of those places where things are haywire,
Yeah.
right? I went to Dubai and the instructor is like, "Why are you slowing down?" There was a lane coming from one side. There was a truck. I could see the truck. I started slowing down. The guy's like, it's a freaking separate lane. I said, well, it's a big truck. In Karachi, they don't follow lanes. So if you train on extremes, your car is literally going to slow down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the user is going to say, look, just drive like a normal guy. Okay.
I think what'll happen here, though, initially, yes, it will become overcautious because it becomes aware that certain cases happen, but then eventually it's going to learn that those situations are more likely to
they're
happen.
going to always be slow. Anyone who's I'll give you an example. Waymo or the alphabet cars, by Google.
Yeah.
The light turns green. You're aware they will stay for 3 more seconds. Because they're being told, look, any red light guy who's going to be,
I know,
wait for
but
those guys.
I think here the thing is, as we get more and more nuanced situations, we learn.
That's true. But though that will be based on training. Then there will be a little button how reckless you want to drive. That's up to you.
Probably, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So
here's the thing. 20 years ago, I told like I used to tell my wife, and she used to tell me that you told this like 10, 20 years ago. I predicted that this is what will happen in the world. The insurance companies will force the autonomous cars with LiDAR and
absolutely,
because they'll say, look, if you want to drive, you pay more. Just like you pay more for a Porsche in Dubai, the insurance rates are higher. I don't know why, but sports cars are insured at a higher rate than normal cars, right? Maybe they expect them to be more reckless drivers. Similarly, with the AI, they'll say, okay, if the AI is a lower rate, they'll insure it at a lower rate, and that'll cause people to not drive inside the city. You've heard of the novel Imperial Earth, right?
No.
Okay, the Imperial Earth was a novel about Earth in the future. The guy comes from another planet to Earth, and he notices that on Earth, if you're inside the city, it's autonomous driving. Only when you get into the village, you're allowed to drive on your own. Similarly, you can expect, like when you go out in the areas. Oh yeah, by the way, we have a patent on an idea called Kona. Kona means corner in Urdu, right? See, the thing is, we look at all of these guys, MIT guys, everybody else. They're trying to look at the headlights and just like through the camera and the LiDAR. And we're like, yo, put a computer on the corner. It'll tell you both sides. You can tell the ambulance to go through, and it'll tell the other guy, if you are in communication, if all of the cars are in communication, it will say, okay, I got two-way communication. I'll slow them down. You go through, right? So the ambulance will go through.
Yeah, right? No, there's a lot of things happening here, but I want to get back to the education here because we're losing some of our members, and we're getting to be close to 2 hours here on the call, and the thing in the education here again is we just have to take a look at the situation where we said, hey, what if we use AI? So it came up and it said we need to spend at least $25,000 a year if we were to go and have all students be able to go to a top-rated preschool, the equivalent of the most elite preschools currently, but it would cost less than $1,000 per student to be able to provide them the capability of having AI, which would deliver better than the average preschool to people that don't have even any option today. And so that would be a big plus, but because the cost would be so much less, that when we then add in all the benefits, the societal benefits of those children being better prepared, than being better students, being more successful, that we would see a return on investment, which be much, much earlier. And when we look then to say, okay, what if we were to take a city like Camden, New Jersey, or Trenton, and say, what would it cost to enable all households to be able to have such an AI in their house, or all the daycares to be able to have such daycare in their such AI in their daycare? And it's funny, but the ChatGPT, I don't remember if it was Claude or ChatGPT, came up and started going and saying, what a great business opportunity here. Look, it's going to take this kind of investment. You're going to get this kind of return. And it's going to increase the marketability of that daycare. it came out a whole business plan and a presentation to potential investors to do something like that. But it really, the idea of the revolutionary impact, the biggest impact, it's a much greater impact than if we were go to high schools and say we're going to use AI to improve education instruction in high school. We cannot get anywhere near as great an impact there as we are able to get by going to the preschool level and having all children be properly prepared to be successful before they hit first grade. Does anybody see a problem with that thinking, or do you agree with that thinking, or what are your thoughts? Because uh, that's something that could be a concrete project to go out and say, we are going to go and maybe in a place like Karachi, take a poor neighborhood and go and rent a room or whatnot and let children come, almost create a daycare environment and bring in the poor children into such environments and expose them to that and see what difference it would make to be able to have all of those children hitting first grade level, being really 100% prepared to be successful. So, Kawar, what are your thoughts on that? Can you picture
Okay.
that making a
Yeah.
big difference?
Yeah, in the chat, I've sent the outline for the AI in education book. And
Mhm.
secondly, there is a similar project called Rehan School. There were many months ago, there was Rehan Laval who came in your chat one time.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, in the same Zoom meeting, you might have remembered him.
What was the name again?
Rehan Laval.
I can't recall. Can't
Okay, he
recall that.
came once, like maybe a year or two ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can look it up. It's called Rehan School. It's in Korangi. So we can collaborate with them. I know him. That's for the practical part, but for the theory part and the learning part, just have a look at in the chat. Just click on the link and tell me if there's a lot of stuff that you could add to it, because this is AI generated. So since you have been talking about the topic for many years, there would be a lot of things you can add to it. You can send it, I'll update it, and I'll give you an account where we can edit, files
Mhm.
on the web through the browsers
Yeah.
and everything else.
Okay.
So we can within 3 days, we'll have a book ready.
Right.
And then we can start translating and making videos in other languages. That
This
will actually get something done.
Yeah, and then we have to keep in mind here for right now, Urdu is, Urdu for the longest time, there was no voice generation in Urdu to be able to go and have easy text to voice or just voice to voice, which we now are able to do. But the idea here of being able to have that interactive uh, mm, mentor, tutor, coach, whatever for young children. The estimates right now are, as I say, 6 to 12 months. We are going to have that. Now, what we have to remember is that when a child gets to go to first grade, they're not going to forget all that AI that they're used to having that companion. That companion is going to stay with them through the public school system. Just one second. The uh, when we see that and we think this is going to change the way, if young people are goal oriented, then school has to change. So what we're going to see, we already see it in the Alpha School in Austin, Texas. They have replaced the human teachers. They don't have any human teachers anymore. All the human teachers have been replaced by AI. The humans are now mentor coaches. What does that mean? That means the human is not responsible for instruction and they're not responsible for assessment. The human is a mentor and a coach. They're there to intervene if they see the student is having difficulty on succeeding on their own. And the mentor coach is not there to explain how to do what you don't know how to do. It's there to, he or she is there to explain, uh, how do you figure out what you need to do to be successful. So it's really the mentor coach's job is only to help the learner refine their learning how to learn. They're not there to help you learn something specific other than the process of learning how to learn. So that's going to change that. So imagine here just a simple thing like saying if the students are used to having a goal and pursuing that goal on their own, that learning goal on their own, they're going to achieve certain milestones at different times. So if we were to take all the testing and now say, well, you take your tests, you take your end of grade or end of year tests, you don't take them at the end of the year. You take them when you think you're ready. So that every week we're offering the testing, and whenever you think you're ready, you take the test. But it's no longer high stakes testing. It's not like, oh, you failed, you got to repeat the whole year. It's like, oh, you didn't succeed, you didn't pass the test. These are the things you were weak in. Go study those things further, and you come back and retake the test when you think you've mastered those. So that the idea that the whole process is driven by the mastery of knowledge by the individual student. And because our primary goal is not whether you learned how to do long division, our primary goal is have you really learned how to learn anything at any time effectively and efficiently? So probably by the time you're in fifth grade or sixth grade, there's probably nothing more the school's adding because the school gives you an assignment, a learning goal, and you do it. And if you've gotten the point that no matter what they ask you to learn, you're able to learn it in no time flat. We're going to see students as young as 11 and 12 years old that are going to be doing doctoral work. Why not? If you've learned to learn anything you want and you've learned to leverage the tools, we are no longer going to go out there and say, hey, you used AI to help learn this. We don't care. And think of how crazy it's going to be that your whole time in school, the school's saying, if you used AI on this, no, you're going to get marked down. And the day you get out of school, you get to a job and saying, if you don't use AI on this, you're going to get fired because I don't want to pay you 10 times as long for 10 times as long to do the job as somebody else who's going to do it with AI.
That
So
happened. That started with the calculator.
exactly, exactly. So the thing here we have to realize is we've got to get the student not to be worried are they using AI, but to be worried are they using AI to learn instead of using AI just to submit a result because the only thing they think that counts is the result. When I was teaching at Purdue University, I can recall I asked at the beginning of one year, I asked the students, what do you want out of this course? And nobody said anything for a long time. And then finally, one student said an A. And I realized that he didn't care whether he learned anything. He just wanted to get a mark for his grade point average. And so I shifted the whole course around and made it all about learning so that the students got excited about learning. I got the major employers to come in and work with the students so that the students realized that the knowledge was the thing that was of value to them much more than a grade point average. And so this is what we need to do with our education system. And we can do this and have the students looking just like that girl from Italy. She used Notebook LM to help her learn more efficiently and effectively so that she had deeper understanding of her textbook or the Shakespeare sonnet she had to learn. And that's what we want. We want every student going and saying, gee, how can I deepen my understanding? How can I get better at this? And not just our education systems at fault when the education system conveys to the learner, the only thing that's important here is that you turned in a paper, not what you learned. So, okay. So I envision here, if what happens if we get to the point where by sixth grade, seventh grade, uh, that the students have totally mastered how to learn anything they want to learn. That basically here, what are universities going to offer them? What is any further education, formal education, going to offer the person who knows how to learn anything highly, highly efficient? And from the teacher's perspective, there are some teachers that are scared stiff about the idea that we're going to get rid of human teachers. But we're only wanting to transition them to be mentor coaches. And when we think about it, the teachers, we all have teachers we remember and say, that teacher changed my life. But very few people are thinking about the teacher who really was the expert in math. They're thinking about the teacher who really took an interest in their learning and in their getting better at doing things, and that personal interest, who became a mentor and a coach. Those are the teachers we remember the most. Yes, Cor.
For 20 years, I did research on distance learning before this online stuff and the internet was there. I mean, 15 years was without the internet. So what I found out in a lot of research was there are 20% of the people like us who can actually learn on their own, and there are 80% that still need a teacher. So the issue is now you can put in as much technology, AI and YouTube and whatever you want, but somehow the research has always ended up stating that 80% of the students will not do anything without a teacher. So
It's
we just somehow.
but it's the issue of self-directed learning. And Finland, we saw in Finland is when you start that child from the earliest age, from age 2 and 3, that we don't spoon feed you knowledge, but we ask you questions and give you missions, and we only assist you in figuring out how to approach the missions. Those children, by the time they reach age 7, first grade in Finland, they are independent leaders, they learners. They
What?
can go forward. But if you train somebody, if you send them through a school system where the only thing they do is they wait for somebody to tell them what to do, and then somebody to tell them how to do it, they have only learned to walk with crutches. They've never learned and been had an assistant to learn how to learn. And that is, I think, one of the biggest changes that I expect we will see. But it's not coming just because you give people goals and say, go for it, that especially older children who have been taught to only do what you're told. I recall I was working on a project with NATO, with the company I worked for in Europe, was working with a NATO project, and there was this American general who came to actually here. My boss was visiting in Texas at a U.S. facility, and he rode with this general whose driver drove them to someplace. And the generals told the driver to go and do something, uh, and when they got out of the car, and then come back and pick them up. And when they came out, the driver was still sitting in the same place. And he says, but you didn't tell me how to go, which way to go. And so that was a story that was always told about the way a lot of U.S. soldiers at that time, this was back in the 1970s, that they were told only to follow instructions and not have imagination. So I think what's important is you can train from the earliest age children to be independent and to be goal oriented rather than process oriented. And that's what we have to do. And I'm seeing your note here, and I agree. Distance learning, and I know that well too, because I both participated in taking distance learning when I was younger, and then later on in exploring here the effectiveness of how you can have effective distant learning. But it gets back to the exact same thing of uh, how you structure in computing and software in general. When we think back in the 70s and 80s, the early generations of software, people wrote software to emulate the human, what the human did. So if the human said, "Oh, I'm going to collect up this data, and then I'm going to look at this data, and then if it's got this in it, I'm going to go get that over there, and so forth and so on." When we automated all those same steps, the first generation. Later on, towards 2000, people began to realize, well, wait a minute, no, let's just start with the goal. What are we trying to achieve? And then figure out how a computer could do that most effectively. And we found we didn't need most of those steps at all. The computer that was needed for a human, because that's the way a human thought and processed things, but the computer didn't. It's the same way now with the education here. A lot of the processes that we use for education are based on hundreds of years ago, because that's all that we knew how to teach people. But today, we see a lot of differences. We no longer are trying to just train military personnel and factory workers. We're trying to train people to really be independent. A good example is China. In China, when we think back 20, 30 years ago, China was known that the only thing kids have done is taught to memorize and to regurgitate information, and very disciplined, and that was all it about. Was it about? Several years ago, I was visiting China here, and I talked to a number of young people, and it was amazing the turnaround. The whole thing was, how innovative can you be? That the students were being pushed to go outside the box, to look for new ways to do things, other ways to do things. And I think this is one of the reasons why we're seeing in the technology areas so much new thinking and technology coming out of China, because they have really turned their education system 180 degrees to be promoting independent thinking and promoting innovation, innovative ideas. Okay, so the key thing I'm looking at is, if we roll out the preschool, the AI to support preschool, so that students are already like miles ahead by the time they get to first grade, that's not going to stop. It's going to continue. By the time a student, a child from age 2, 3, 4, 5 is spending almost the most of the day talking to an AI about everything, just like you can talk to ChatGPT. If you go to advanced voice, or if you go, and Claude has the capability now too, and you just talk, you just chatter about something here. Oh, I'm curious about this. I'm curious about that. Hey, why is this like that? What do you think about that? I think what you just told me, hey, AI, what you just told me is garbage. That can't be true. Tell me proof. Why do you think that's like that? I'm questioning you.
Okay.
And you get into that whole mode. That's not going to stop. So I think here the change, doing the change at the preschool level, is going to totally shift the society, because those children will have learned to have AI as a companion, a confidant, a tutor, a mentor, a coach, and a best friend even.
Can
Yes.
can we add all of these topics and all of these into the book, so we can have like a one area where all the stuff ideas are written down? Secondly, when COVID hit, I took those ideas related to distance learning, and then I implemented them into I was actually teaching system architecture in Karachi University. So at that time, it was like in January, it went all the way to October, because everything went haywire. But what happened is, I put all of those ideas of distance learning into the course without approval of anybody. And what happened is, I was able to test which methods. And then the important thing that came out of that was I was able to figure out that at least 17,000 rupees per student is required to be able to just do the assessments and run the course. So I was able to, because of that, like the 80% that they need a teacher. So what I was doing is calculating what is the minimum effort required per student, so which is going to be the cost. So add all of these types of things into the book so we can calculate the cost of the current price in different areas, like different teachers and different areas, and how many students you need. So if we add all of this research in, then we can actually start getting some numbers, and then we can say, okay, the current technology requires this amount of effort, and this is the minimum required just to run a university course or a school course or this. So we'll have some idea.
Yeah,
right.
Actually, here I actually ran through those numbers. I've got a lot of the various numbers, what different scenarios cost, what the components within that cost, to be able to show the return on investment factor for society, through various thoughts there on how this can take place. When I was teaching at Purdue, one of the things I did, even though we were teaching at the undergraduate level, I required all my students to write a book. I said, I first had a textbook, and I came in, I started going through the textbook, and then I said, this is garbage. This, they're not really learning how to learn. So I came back in with about 15 books in a big box. I said, you read as many of those as you need, and you write your own book on the subject. And then, it's basically the Feynman technique is what you were describing earlier about a student who can explain or tries to explain something to somebody else will learn much more about a subject than trying to just learn it for themselves.
Yeah, you learn 90% if you try to teach it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think here I see a lot of opportunities for us to work together. I see we've got a couple of new folks here. Joseph Sheckler. Uh, can you perhaps introduce yourself? I've not seen you at any of our sessions previously. Joseph Sheckler. Okay, maybe he can't speak. Can you just perhaps write something about yourself in the chat then? Okay. Uh, Edward, I think you've been with us previously, Ian. iPhone, who are you?
Hi, my name is Sid Rizvi.
And Sid or Sig?
Sid, SYD,
Oh, that's said SYD. Okay, okay. And you're from where?
New Jersey,
Okay, where in New Jersey?
Morristown.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm in Westfield.
Okay.
So nearby. So please, if you have not received the direct invitation from me, I suggest put your contact information, preferably WhatsApp, in number in the chat, and so I can invite you if you find these are interesting. We normally do more demoing of tools in these sessions. But today is somewhat philosophical, looking here at an implication for society and with regards to education. So that's been a little different. But please, any of you who did not get a direct invite from me via WhatsApp, put your information in the chat so I can make sure that we send you direct invitations. We meet every Saturday, normally, most Saturdays, at 9 o'clock. And but I think the week after next, I'm going to be in Calgary at the Rotary Convention. So, but we will be having a breakout session there on AI. I'm one of the uh, founding board members of the Rotary AI Fellowship, and so we will be presenting there. Okay, I think I've covered most of the things here. that the changes that we cause to happen at the preschool level will actually cause the whole education system to change just simply because we're changing 90% of what would be taking place in kindergarten simply because every child will be prepared coming in to to kindergarten. That will be a totally different experience. And then we're going to, by that time, we'll keep in mind if a school has seen that AI can teach all of the material better, what we're really going to want to do is continue that in kindergarten and have the teacher become that mentor coach and stand off to the side. You've probably heard that in teachers' colleges here in the US, at least a decade, the saying has been, do not be the sage on the stage, be the what was it the guide at the side. Be the guide at the side, not the sage on the stage. So that if we've seen that AI can be the better instructor, that AI can be the better at assessments, the idea here is that mentor coach, you be on the side and you watch and you only intervene if you see an intervention is warranted. Because if you intervene too much, you become a crutch. And you are actually doing a disservice to that student when you're a crutch because you're not giving them an opportunity to develop their own learning skills. And therefore you're hindering their becoming an effective independent learner, which is a prerequisite for becoming an effective lifelong learner. Okay, everyone. It's now 11:20. I think here, I think I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Any closing thoughts from any of you? Was this a useful session?
Yeah, it was useful. Anybody who is, I've got multiple books, not just this one. And the ones even that are ready, you can add to that. And I turned it on the open source model. That means anybody can make changes and add their name and be part of the copyright.
Certainly, it was a useful session, and I have great interest in education system, so it was useful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bill. Couple of things on the politician front. It's not just the thing about getting elected is not about impressing your constituents, but the people who give you the money. So that's a very important point to make. The other thing on the Tesla, yes, the technology is not there. They're not using the LiDAR. They're not using the infrared. If you look on your Tesla and see where it has mapped out the cars, if it rains really heavy, they start disappearing. Mm-hmm. Same with heavy fog. Same if it actually gets dazzled by the sun. And then you're left with a red steering wheel telling you to take over, as if you're not dazzled by the sun, can see through fog or through the rain,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
so
I think
it is a problem.
I think here, this is sort of been in small test areas, so it hasn't really received the attention that of the weakness of the Tesla model. And then we turn around and for political reasons, I believe we block here far superior Chinese technology from coming into the United States.
There is that.
Yeah, so
I think what it is that the whole marketing approach was with the Tesla chips and 5 cameras, you can put it into any car you like, and that would be his next stage probably, and then reprogram that a little bit to deal with the LiDAR and the infrared that could be superimposed on top of them afterwards.
Yeah, we have to think here also, the Mercedes demonstrated a Mercedes truck oh, I think it was about 5 years ago.
Mm,
And that was actually quite good. That would only deal on the highways. So it would deal on the Autobahns in Germany,
yeah.
which are very clearly marked and so forth. But the Mercedes said they had no plans to release that truck in less than 10 years.
Right.
And the state of Thüringen in Germany threatened to sue Mercedes because they say that if you don't release that for 10 years, all of the accidents that could have been prevented if we had that technology, uh,
Mm,
you became that we're going to hold Mercedes liable because Germany's got this law that says if you see somebody in danger, you are obligated, legally obligated to help.
right.
You
Right.
cannot bypass and avoid help.
Yeah, no, I mean, 20 or 30 years ago, you could wire up LiDAR to make it impossible for a car to crash,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah. But I
and
think
how many
here
people have died in that time,
yeah, and the Mercedes, San Francisco banned or try. Well, I think they actually did ban uh, self-driving cars about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and because there had been several accidents with the self-driving cars. And the result was the taxi drivers who were against the idea for different reasons
Mm,
and but some people in neighborhoods who just were anti-technology really went to town and caused a ban to be put into effect. But when they actually studied the statistics, they found that the per mile driven, the human drivers had twice as many accidents per mile driven as the
I thought it
AI.
was seven.
What's that?
The last time you gave those statistics, you said 7 times more accidents per human driver,
No, 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 no.
and
It's two times more accidents per human driver, but
okay,
it's 7 times of the accidents
yeah,
that involve the AI. Accidents that involve self-driving cars were 7 times more often caused by a human, the other vehicle, than by
okay,
the AI drive. And the accidents with human injury were
mm,
5 times more likely to have occurred in human caused accidents than in AI caused accidents. So
okay,
those
okay.
were the three things. So I mean it's definitely going to come, but this gets back to our problem that we have this bias
Mm.
that uh,
The perfect is the enemy of the good.
well, no, it's almost the other way around. It's the idea that a human accident is much more okay than a self-driving accident,
Right, right,
right?
yeah,
And also we have the problem that when we compare AI to anything done by humans, we are
mm,
always looking at the perfect human versus the
yeah,
AI, not the average human. And
right,
so when we look here, for example, IBM has IBM Watson that is getting to be very widespread in hospitals now for
mm,
diagnoses and for treatment prescription. And that there was this thinking here that doctors, I forget what the percentage is, but it's like the Watson is like at about a 90 something percent accuracy rate. And the human doctors are at about a 50% accuracy rate in
right.
comparison. And uh, but people are saying here, no, AI makes mistakes. Yeah, but it makes
Yeah.
mistakes far
Well, the
less.
thing about it is, it's like you say, it's capable of a wider scope of analysis because it has more information.
Mhm.
Famously, Ramanujan died in the UK because he got a kind of he brought an infection with him from India that was easily treated in India because they knew what it was.
Mhm.
In the UK, they had no idea what it was, so he died.
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah. This is we see here that again, it goes back to a single doctor has only their experience and what they learn, whereas the AI is able to call on tens of thousands of cases to try to analyze what's going on. So it's not surprising that it's able to detect far more situations in a far more nuanced manner. So anyway, so guys, it's now 11:28. And I would say we probably should call this session to an end. And Kawar, I'll be in touch with you. And Sid, I'm going to add you to our list here. And again, I'm going to put my contact information here. So if any of you want, okay. So any of you want, just send me a WhatsApp if you're not on the list and you want to get added to the list, so that we can have you joining our group here. I expect we'll have a much bigger crowd next time because of Eid. Is it Eid or Eid? Kawar, what's the correct pronunciation?
Eid.
Eid.
Eid in Urdu.
Eid. Yeah, okay. Eid. Yes. So we will see everybody here next Saturday, and we'll probably have some big announcements because there's a number of annual technology meetings that are taking place now in June. So we'll see what's new by then. Okay, so thank you everyone, and goodbye for today.
Okay, have a great day.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye,
bye.
everyone.
Bye.